About a year ago, an American author by the name of Mel Robbins published a book called The Let Them Theory, which, if you've watched my channel for a while, may sound familiar. If you read my 116-page essay on workplace bullying, which I wrote from the summer of 2015 to the spring of 2016, which has been published on my website for almost a decade, and to which I link in my channel's description and in the description of almost every workplace bullying video, you might remember that I concluded my essay with the words, "let them," in all caps, bold and italics and centered and underlined, and published it with the same formatting to my website, where it has now been read by countless numbers of people, which I'm sure is entirely a coincidence. I actually wrote the conclusion to my essay, which ends with the words, "let them," in all caps, bold and italics, and centered and underlined, on Easter Sunday, March 27th, 2016, and I recited that conclusion aloud in a video that I published to this channel on January 10th, 2021. Mel Robbins has actually been accused of plagiarizing the words "let them" from another writer, Cassie Phillips, who says that she wrote a poem in which she used the words "let them" repeatedly in 2019, that she says went viral, a term for which I'm sure there is no technical definition, in October of 2022. In other words, 3 years and 6.5 years after I concluded my 116-page essay on workplace bullying with the words "let them" in all caps, bold and italics, and centered and underlined, all of which I'm sure is pure coincidence. I became aware of the book, The Let Them Theory, earlier this year only because a viewer wrote me about it anonymously. If you're watching, I don't know who you are, but you know who you are, and I would like to acknowledge you because, unlike other so-called writers, I give other writers credit and attribution for their work. At the time, I had never heard of Mel Robbins before in my life. I actually initially thought that she was somehow related to Tony Robbins, which I think is appropriate because they seem to have something in common. I had no idea who Mel Robbins was, and after reading this garbage, I don't want to know. This dumpster fire of a book is so screamingly bad, it's even worse than Taylor's latest album. The Let Them Theory is over 300 wildly disorganized pages of vapid, empty, mind-numbingly superficial cliches that ultimately don't mean anything, woefully out of touch and tone-deaf examples, first world problems, and intellectually insulting repetition that is often not only flat out false, but also even abusive. Not to mention embarrassing typos on almost every page with zero cohesion or depth, all masquerading under the guise of self-help that will leave you short almost $30. The Let Them Theory is not a theory at all. It's just an imperative sentence. The gist of this pseudo-theory, if I understood it correctly, but it was written so badly I'm not sure I did, is about releasing control. In other words, it takes Mel Robbins about 300 pages to tell you that you have no control over other people's thoughts, feelings, or behaviors. You should try to control your own emotions instead of trying to control other people. Real power is personal agency, the ability to control your own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors instead of trying to control other people. Yeah, Mel, that's why it's called personal empowerment. Parents should teach their children emotional literacy by validating their feelings. You should try to understand other people's perspectives when interacting with them. And people do not have to be perfect in order for you to love them. You should not compare yourself to other people. You should not cling to people. Friendship takes work. You should not enable toxic people. Instead of trying to change people, you can influence them with positive reinforcement, because honey catches more flies than vinegar. In dating and romantic relationships, you should use your discernment to identify the red flags, and before you can be in a successful partnership, you have to love yourself first. In other words, this Frankenstein of a book is a sloppy, incongruous, amalgamated word salad that repackages pop psych platitudes about codependency and presents them as some kind of revolutionary scientific theory that basically tells you not to be a Karen. It is the literary equivalent of a warning label on a bottle of shampoo telling you not to drink it. In case you didn't know that you're supposed to get a handle on your road rage when you're sitting in traffic, you can always shell out $30 and slog through this mess to find out. Just by the way, for only 1 page more and about a third of the cost, you can always reread Codependent No More, which was published almost 40 years ago. I wonder if Melody Beatty is accusing Mel Robbins of plagiarism too, except she can't because she's dead. Or you could just revisit "What other people think of me is none of my business," a quote loosely attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt, who lived over 100 years ago. Or try this one on for size. "Comparison is the thief of joy," from another Roosevelt. I absolutely cannot believe how bad this book is. When I was trying to read it, I refreshed my social media about 1,000,000 times, desperate for anything to distract me, because the only other preferable alternative was to be drawn and quartered. When I started reading it, I was outraged. By the time I got to the end, I was laughing out loud at the absurdity. The list of cliches I pulled from this pablum totals over 3 pages, and that's just what I had the energy to type. A selection. The truth is, other people hold no real power over you unless you give it to them. No matter how hard you try, you will never be able to control or change another person. The only person you are in control of is you. Your thoughts, your actions, your feelings. When you're an adult, your life, happiness, health, healing, social life, friendships, boundaries, needs, and success are all your responsibility. Stress is a major problem, and it's time you deal with it. In life, there will be things you can control and things that you can't. There will be situations that are fair and situations that are not. Your response to every situation is going to be unique and different every time. Unique and different, because those aren't the same thing. The truth is, people will have negative opinions about you, and there is absolutely nothing you can do to change this fact. The fact is, it is impossible to control someone else's thoughts. Therefore, fearing what other people think or trying to control their thoughts is a complete waste of time. At 5 p.m., my dog Homie is so annoying because he thinks it's dinner time. He follows me around. He pants like crazy. He jumps up on me. And you know what I think? He is a giant pain in the rear end and he needs to chill. But I still love him. Adults are allowed to think whatever they want to think, so are you. You are so much more powerful than you believe. The only person you can change is you. Some days your life is going to be steady, still, and calm. Other days there's a hurricane that hits and you're going to feel like you're drowning, but you will not drown. You deserve to have amazing friendships in your life. Friends are awesome. They make your life more fun and fulfilling, and they can become the family you've chosen for yourself. This matters because when you are physically near someone, you naturally spend a lot more time together. If you don't live near each other, you are not going to see each other as often. It will require more effort to stay connected. And the reason why this matters so much is that the more I promise you, I will get through this. The more times you see someone in person, the more opportunities you have to get to know them, to spend time with them, to share experiences together, and to click and form a deeper friendship. If you're physically next to someone, whether you're living across the street or in the dorm or across the hall, or sitting at the desk or the cubicle next to them, or seeing them every weekend at your kid's soccer game, you naturally spend time together because of proximity. And get this, when you're an adult, you don't have as much free time as you did when you were younger to hang out because you're working. This matters, and it matters a lot. Maybe they might never change. I just threw that one in there because it's grammatically incorrect and redundant. Healing is a deeply personal journey. When you are dealing with a child, you are responsible for their emotional, financial, and physical support. When you are dealing with an adult, you are not. This may not seem like a big deal, but it's a really big deal. Love is the most powerful force in the world. As extraordinary as love is, it's also the source of so much pain. When the heart is involved, logic goes out the window. This pattern in your life will repeat unless you break it. Yeah, Mel, that's the definition of a pattern. In a long-term relationship, there will be periods in your relationship that are amazing, and there will be times that are extremely difficult. There is no perfect person. The hardest part about a breakup is that you have to go through it. You are the only person you are guaranteed to spend the rest of your life with. This isn't a cliche. Yes, Mel, it is. If all you ever do is stay on the surface, wasting your time and energy on other people and on things beyond your control, you will never discover the deeper meaning and possibilities in your life. Except there never is any deeper meaning. Ever. In 300 pages, this dreck has about as much depth as I'm Too Sexy. By right, said Fred. That was me giving credit and attribution to other creatives for their work. And then there's this gem. The first pillar of friendship is proximity. Proximity means how often you are physically near them. Just in case you didn't know the meaning of the word proximity. I'm sorry. There's more. She writes, social contagion, which is a fancy way to say that people's behavior is contagious. That was to clarify the meaning of the word contagion, in case you didn't know. That's 2 new SAT words for you. Yeah, Mel, that's fancy. That's so fancy. You already know. Mel Robbins also writes, repeatedly, about how much expert research supports her findings. There's just one small problem. It doesn't show. Wow, you mean I shouldn't get upset at other people for being different from me? That's deep, Mel. That's some straight up Schopenhauer shit right there. Calling this drivel expert research is kind of like Kim Kardashian calling herself a natural beauty. If this is science, then I'm Beyonce. Also, don't forget that every cloud has a silver lining. Look before you leap and stop and smell the roses. Don't put your cart before your horses. Put all your eggs in one basket, or count your chickens before they're hatched. Don't forget to think outside the box. Treat other people the way you want to be treated, and leave the world a better place than when you found it. Also, everybody poops. And all of these bromides are written not once, not twice, but so many times throughout the book that I lost count of the jaw-dropping repetition, which my intuition tells me makes a very compelling argument against word count targets in publishing. The repetition was laid on so thick that the book started to feel like a game of memory. Where have I seen this before? Every time I turned a page, I felt like I was turning over a card with a picture of a frog on it. Barring the excessive overuse of the word amazing, my list of repeated concepts in my notes totals over a page, and that was just what I had the energy to type without wanting to tar and feather myself. A selection. When you stop obsessing over what other people think, say, or do, you finally have the energy to focus on your own life. Same page. When you stop trying to control things that aren't yours to control, you stop wasting your energy. You can't control how other adults behave, and stressing about it diminishes your power. You must learn to focus on what you say, think, or do. That's how you remain in control. Focusing on what you can't control makes you stressed. Focusing on what you can control makes you powerful. If you allow yourself to get completely stressed out, you are giving all your power to other people. When you let other people stress you out, you surrender your power to things that either don't matter or are beyond your control. Okay, that was just a selection of what is basically the same thing reiterated probably about 100 times. The reality is adults are as emotional as children. 2 pages later, it's because adults at their core are just as emotional as children. The truth is life isn't fair. Same page. Life isn't fair. It's just not. Thank you for the clarification. People are social creatures that are highly influenced and inspired by the people around them. Next page. We are social creatures and are highly influenced and inspired by the people around us, because we are people. Nice syllogism now. People only heal when they are ready. Same page. People only heal when they are ready to do it for themselves. The reality is adults choose who and how they love, and sometimes they won't choose you. 3 pages later, people choose who and how they love, and sometimes it won't be you. Dating today is really hard. Yes, dating is hard. Dating is hard because everybody is so scared to alone. That was a typo and also false. If you meant scared to be alone, not everyone is scared to be alone, and fear of being alone is not what makes dating hard. Mel Robbins reminds us that friendships, quote, come and go 7 times, and that was only what I was able to count. And even with all this repetition, she still feels the need for some reason to summarize every chapter with a numbered list and bolding. And then there is the pièce de résistance. Understanding the larger context and acknowledging their completely normal fears will help you focus on the let me part and operate with more grace to be the wise and compassionate adult. The more grace and kindness you display, the more space you create for a change in the dynamic to happen. That was paragraph 1. Paragraph 2. Understanding the larger context, comma, will help you to focus on the let me part and operate with more grace and be the wise and compassionate adult. The more grace and kindness you display, the more space you create for a change in the dynamic to happen. The Let Them Theory is published by Hay House, a publisher for which I previously held tremendous respect. Whenever I spent my routine 4 hours in the New Age metaphysical section of my favorite bookstore in my hometown, I made a point of prioritizing books published by Hay House, above all by Louise Hay. May she rest in peace. I used to listen to Hay House radio. I won't anymore. Hay House, I'm going to overlook the run-on sentences, comma splices, and fragments that you left on almost every page of this used toilet paper roll. I'm also going to overlook every comma you left before the word because. But really, 8 million copies sold, translated into 64 languages, and you're still letting shit like that slide. Do you not have any copy editors? Have you ever heard of Grammarly? Is Hay House desperate? Do they need money? My professional website, the content for which now totals almost 600 pages, which I wrote, edited, and published entirely by myself with no editor, no publisher, and no team, has no mistakes like that in it. And then the book is replete with specious arguments that are not only repeated but also patently untrue. My list of those also totaled over a page before I stopped counting. First, she writes about 5 times. It's about a fundamental law of human nature. In italics, all human beings have a hardwired need for control. Remember the fundamental law of human nature. You can't control what other people say, think, or do. Remember the fundamental law of human nature. You can't control what another adult says, does, or thinks. The fundamental law of human nature, people need to feel in control of their decisions. Okay, first of all, Mel, those are 3 different concepts, so you just contradicted yourself. Second of all, I don't think human nature has laws because it isn't a science. In fact, it's not even an academic subject. If you're trying to talk about psychology, which actually is a science, is control really the most important thing? Is that really the first thing you learn in every psychology course of study? You didn't want to talk about how childhood experiences shape people's characters, or things like projection, transference, or mirroring. And finally, a lot of people do not want to be in control of their decisions. They want to be followers. They like to be told what to do. If they let someone else call all the shots, they can abdicate responsibility for the ramifications of those decisions. That's called Peter Pan syndrome, and it's the trad wife phenomenon. It continues. Family is with you for life. Yeah, tell that to every child born into a narcissistic family system. Where have we all heard that one before? Gaslighting at its finest. Lady, it's called no contact for a reason. Look it up. It takes an extraordinarily mature person to be able to detach from your emotions and want to step into someone else's shoes. No, that's actually just empathy. And that this was your parents' first time as a human being too. Not true, reincarnation is real. You can't let emotions drive your decisions because they will often stop you from making the right decisions. Also false. Heart-centered decisions are some of the best that you can make in life. Avoiding your emotional body and ignoring your feelings by staying stuck in your headspace is a recipe for disaster. What looks good on paper is often totally wrong for you. And the best decisions are neither intellectual nor emotional. They're intuitive. Some people are just lucky. We all love to think of excuses for why people who have what we want are somehow different from us. They've gotten lucky. Okay, you just totally contradicted yourself. And that is the voice of jealousy, and I have a video on that. People have the blessings that they have in this lifetime because they earned those blessings in past lives over the course of many incarnations, and because their souls decided they would need those blessings in order to do what they want to do in this lifetime. That is a contract between them and God's business is none of your business. There is no such thing as luck. Luck has nothing to do with it, and any explanation that contains the word just is not only intellectually weak, but also emotionally illiterate. Comparing yourself to other people is unavoidable. It is human nature to look around and see what everyone else is doing and how you measure up. No, actually, some of us have managed to extricate ourselves from the world of comparisons and instead simply focus on ourselves and do the best that we can with what we have been given. You are not limited by where you live or the circumstances you are facing or the aspects of your life that you believe are limitations. I'm pretty sure that one stands for itself. I hate the fact that a lot of people think that just because someone is distant, they are now your enemy. Really? A lot of people? Because I don't know anyone who thinks like that. The connection you have with another person never actually breaks. Again, no contact, Mel, look it up. Also, ghosting, look it up. People love to be complimented because they feel seen and appreciated. No, a lot of us see right through flattery for what it really is. It's a form of manipulation, and it insults our intelligence. It's also harassment. People love to talk about themselves. Prying into people's personal lives is also harassment. The reality is people only change when they feel like changing. Next page. And the reality is, people only change when they feel like changing. And yet a lot of people feel like changing and find themselves unable to because they don't know how to heal their trauma. Change is not about feeling like it or being ready. It's ultimately about healing, which needs to happen on a spiritual level. Adults only do what they feel like doing. People only do what they feel like doing. Girl, what? Have you ever had a job? If you're working right now, are you working just because you feel like it? I'm pretty sure that every adult human being on the planet does stuff that they don't want to do all day, every day, out of necessity. Not to mention a sense of duty, obligation, and responsibility to self, others, and society. People who are struggling already feel like a burden and often tell themselves they are letting everyone down, which is why people often don't ask for help or open up about what is going on. No, people don't talk about their trauma because they're used to being gaslit. It's not because people don't support us, it's because they don't understand us, so they think we're the problem. About her own mental health struggles, one of my many fears, that I would never climb out of this. That's why the process of getting better will always feel worse in the beginning. First of all, recovery often feels really good in the beginning. Recovering alcoholics experience the pink cloud phase of early sobriety because they are no longer poisoning their bodies. Also, if recovery feels bad in the beginning, that's not because you think it's going to take forever. It's because all of your repressed trauma comes to the surface for you to process. You have to feel it to heal it. And this one, because I know many of you work in behavioral health. I, the parent, will pay for therapy so long as you and your therapist agree to a monthly check-in with me. Having your parents pay for your therapy and then refusing to let them talk to your therapist is a form of gaslighting. How's that sound? Has Mel Robbins ever heard of HIPAA? Because in this country, at least, there's a little something called therapist-client confidentiality. Gaslighting is a deliberate attempt to invalidate another person's emotional reality. If your therapist is treating you and not your parents, then not letting your parents pump your therapist for intel about you is not gaslighting. It's obeying the law. And this part is for my viewers. If you are a target of workplace bullying, Mel Robbins has some advice for you. Imagine you're at work and your colleague is in a bad mood. Instead of letting their negativity affect you, just say, let them. Let them be grumpy. It's not your problem. Focus on your work and how you feel. Just don't let it get to you. But let me ask you this question. Who is responsible for your, all caps, career? That's right, you are. You are never stuck. That's a lie you tell yourself. You can leave a job, a relationship, a living situation, a date, an interview, or a conversation anytime you want to. Yeah, Mel, why doesn't she just leave? You do not have to stay in any job that makes you feel frustrated, demoralized, or stressed. And you shouldn't let them string you along. Stop fixating on your current situation and start focusing on finding a better opportunity. Right now, there's an amazing job with a kick-ass boss, a better salary, and a desk next to a window, waiting for you to come find it. Your company is not the only company on this planet, and there's a million bosses out there who would be ecstatic to help advance your career. Let me go get it. Your career is your responsibility, and you have more power here than you think. It's time to start acting like it. Let me choose to spend my weekends differently. Instead of blowing off steam at the bars with your friends and complaining about work, how about you pour your time and energy into doing the work to find a job you deserve? If you update your resume, start networking, and go on some interviews, who's in control now? That's right, you! All caps. You can act like a toddler and call your boss every name in the book, but the harsh truth is that you're the one to blame because you are choosing to stay in a job that makes you miserable. That's on you. And you want to know what else is on you? your dumb excuses for why you are not looking for another job. You have so much more power than you think. It's time to start acting like it. You are capable of creating anything you want if you are willing to put the time and energy into working for it. You are a powerful manifester. The fact is, 95% of the things that you want in life are things that you can create if you are willing to work hard, be consistent and disciplined and patient. You just have to get up every day, put one foot in front of the other, and work hard to do a little better and be a little better than you were yesterday. You just didn't work hard enough. How's that make you feel? I'm pretty sure all of that fuckery speaks for itself. Personally, I think Mel Robbins should say that to the hundreds of thousands of federal employees who lost their jobs because of hair plugs, and to the almost 1 million federal employees who were furloughed due to a government shutdown and who had to go to their local food banks. And I think that she should say it to them in person. I'm aware of my privilege. I'm a 10th generation American, a United States citizen, and a native English speaker. I'm white, cishet, and upper middle class. I have an above average IQ, a master's degree, and a skill set for what it's worth. I have no mortgage, no kids, and no student loan debt. And I come from a major metropolitan area. I pretty much have privilege coming out of my pores. And I have never once in 20 years ever been able to seamlessly transition from one job into another one. There is always a period of unemployment or underemployment. It can take months to get an interview and years to get another job. There is not one target of workplace bullying in the world who does not have a resume ready to go and who is not looking for another job every second of their free time. This type of be all you can be toxic positivity is gaslighting, and it's dangerous. And finally, if all of the cliches, repetition, and lies were not enough, Mel Robbins goes so far as to verbally abuse her own readers, calling them stupid, dumb, and dumber, which are ableist slurs, at least 10 times that I counted. Why are you so stupid? Because of the way you feel, apparently. Emotions are, quote, an insult to your intelligence. Her words, not mine. Her readers are not only stupid, they're also crazy. Her word, not mine. Again, because of their emotions, which is not only abusive, but also misogynistic. When recounting a fictitious story about an imaginary friend with no name, who wants her husband to lose weight on the pretense that she cares about his health when she really just doesn't want to have sex with him and doesn't want to be seen with him in public, Mel Robbins refers to her friend's fat husband as, quote, his lazy ass. She tells people who are in toxic relationships to, quote, wake up twice and, quote, you are the problem. And the coup de grace in Mel Robbins' magnum opus, repeated not once, not twice, but a grand total of 5 times. If you are in a toxic relationship, Mel Robbins' sage advice for you is to, quote, end your bitching or end the relationship. That was a direct quote, and both of those ends were in all caps. Oh, quel bon mot, Mel. Chapeau bas. HT. That is poetry up there with Dylan Thomas. In other words, if you're struggling in life, Mel Robbins would really like you to just get your shit together and stop feeling sorry for yourself because you're playing the victim and you blame other people for your problems, you dumb, stupid bitch. Or, as Mel Robbins writes at the end of one of her chapters in bold, it's time to grow up and act like a mature adult. Yeah, Mel, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Or, as my family says to me, you're a loser. Grow up. Get a life. You can read crap like this, or you can just join the military. If Mel Robbins speaks to people the way that she writes, I understand why her kids need therapy. Again, I don't know who Mel Robbins is, but I'm pretty sure she's not a writer. She's more of a motivational speaker, and this isn't self-help, this is life coaching. Pretty much the only profession in the world more useless than HR. I'm pretty sure life coaching is something that you do when you don't have the talent to do anything else. And I mentioned Tony Robbins because I don't know much about him either, but I find his tone off-putting too. Granted, some people do respond to this in-your-face, confrontational, tough love style. Coach me up, bruh. No pain, no gain. But I find it abusive. It also misses the mark. Superficial doesn't even cut it. It's not the superficiality. It's the complete and total lack of empathy. The biggest mistake of the let them theory is the same problem with almost all self-help, and by extension most psychology. It's entirely cognitive. If mind over matter were an effective strategy for any problem in life, then this world would be a completely different place. When Mel Robbins name calls people's emotions, including her own, like fear, stupid, her wires are crossed. If we define stupidity as a below average IQ, then intelligence is intellectual, feeling is emotional. Those are two different languages, English and Spanish. You do not apply thought, rationality, or reason to problems that are psychological, especially those that are buried deep in the subconscious and the unconscious. I'm pretty sure there's not a human being on the planet who does not know that smoking is bad for you, and yet millions of people smoke anyway. Knowledge is not power. You do not think your way out of problems that are emotional, psychological, and ultimately spiritual in nature. That's like trying to plug an American device into a European outlet, and vice versa. And that's why I'm no longer a fan of traditional talk therapy. Therapy can give you awareness, which again is intellectual. After that, it pretty much stops there. Sitting and talking about your problems on a cognitive level does nothing to address deep issues that are in your psyche and in your body. And that's why a lot of people, like me, spend decades in therapy and make very little progress. You can have all the awareness in the world and still be sick as a dog. Telling people to end your bitching, get your shit together and stop feeling sorry for yourself, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, pick yourself up and just get on with it. Stiff upper lip is not only unhelpful, it's also dangerous. That's basically telling people to stop feeling their feelings, shut down their emotional bodies, stay in their headspace, and use their minds to intellectually power themselves through their day to do what they need to do while doing absolutely nothing to address their triggers or their trauma. People do not have stress. They have trauma. It's interesting that Mel Robbins drops buzzwords like healing throughout the book, and yet this is the least healing thing I have ever read in my life. People are not stupid. If intellect were any measure of mental health, then hair plugs Mr. 155 wouldn't have 15 offspring with 5 different baby mamas. People are not necessarily stupid per se, and I have a video on that. The problem is not low IQ. It's not laziness either. There are a lot of things that hold people back, both external and internal. Societally, we are not equal. Systemic and institutionalized racism is real. Millions of people all over the world are victims of all kinds of bigotry and prejudice. People have mental illness and neurodivergence, something that Mel Robbins herself should understand because she writes in this book that she has ADHD. If you're getting irritated just standing in line or sitting in traffic, you may very well have some kind of mental health condition like depression. You may be neurospicy. You may be negatively influenced by spirit. Emotional dysregulation is the result of trauma. It's also spiritual. People have low self-esteem and lack of self-worth. They have poverty wounds, scarcity consciousness, fear of failure, fear of success. Most people don't really love themselves. People have trauma from childhood, often from things that they can't remember that happened when they were pre-verbal or in utero. Psychologists estimate that most families are dysfunctional. People have trauma that they inherited from their ancestors and from their class in general. They have ancestral curses and generational trauma. It's in their lineage. It's literally in their DNA. That's why cancer researchers are focused on genetics. We know that psychological trauma alone has the capacity to corrupt DNA. People have past life trauma. Past life trauma is real. People have past life vows, contracts, and agreements that have the capacity to fuck up their entire life by creating repeating patterns. People have all kinds of unconscious tapes, programs, and patterns running deep underneath the surface from their ancestors, from past lives, and from childhood. It's in their bodies, it's in their DNA. And on top of all of that, there are dark forces among us that work very hard to destroy humanity by provoking our division and our self-sabotage. It's spiritual warfare. Spiritual warfare is also real. And it can take an entire lifetime for one person to unpack. Take obesity, for example. In her apocryphal example about her friend's husband and his lazy ass, Mel Robbins reduces the entire problem to eating potato chips on the couch while watching TV. Literally the most cliche fat trope ever. In other words, diet and exercise. If the obesity epidemic were only about calories in and calories out, don't you think the problem would have been solved a long time ago? There are so many factors in the obesity equation. The American food supply in and of itself is toxic. It has a lot of things in it that slow digestion and encourage weight retention. It has hormones, which can certainly affect metabolism. Every human being on the planet has microplastics in their body, and God knows what that is doing to us. The Western mainstream industrialized processed diet is rich in calories, but very low in nutrition. So you have to eat more of it in order to get what you need. You can be obese and still be deprived. Obese people have a lot of psychological issues. They have low self-esteem. They don't feel good about themselves. They may struggle with some kind of mental health condition like depression, which explains why they can't get off the couch. They may be neurospicy, which explains the procrastination. In a spiritual sense, the excess weight may be a defense. It's like the Michelin Man. People have spare tires because they're trying to protect themselves. It's a suit of armor. They may have sexual trauma. People are traumatized. They may be empaths who are sensitive to energy, and they're trying to fight that stuff off. The weight may be the physical manifestation of other people's stuff that they have taken on. And something that no one ever talks about in the obesity epidemic is the fact that we don't smoke anymore, not like we used to. Since the Surgeon General's warning, smoking has decreased and weight has increased. Interesting correlation. Cigarettes used to be advertised, especially to women, as a means of weight control. I could go on and on. What I'm saying is that this entire book is reductivist. It is a grotesque oversimplification of very complex phenomena. It is nothing more than 300 pages of superficial band-aids that never address the deep core root of any problem. That's why I work so hard in my videos to communicate a holistic approach to the problem of workplace bullying, practical, emotional, and spiritual, because without a thorough examination of all influencing factors, you have no progress. The only meaningful thing I read in those 300 pages was a statistic from the United Nations that 25% of the world's population does not have access to clean drinking water, and it was in the section on comparisons. That statistic is true, but it's also unhelpful. As I've stated, on my channel, comparing yourself to people who have it worse than you is passive bullying. It's punching down. It's using other people's pain to feel better about your own. It's derogation, even if it's only in your head. And it also doesn't work. It's just another Band-Aid. It's more intellectual knowledge that ultimately does nothing to heal your trauma. Angelina Jolie worked with refugees for about 2 decades. She did a lot of good work, but she is still one deeply traumatized woman. What this book amounts to is hacks. This is what passes for healing in the age of distraction. TikTok, tweets, swipe left. Which brings me to my next point. Over half of all American adults read below a 6th grade level. 6th grade is when you are 10 or 11 years old. And over 40% of all American adults actually believe that human beings and dinosaurs coexisted. In a country where the majority of people say that they read only 1 book a year, maybe this is the book for them. It's either this or cat videos. Throughout the book, all the cliches and repetition and lies and verbal abuse are illustrated with examples that are not just commonplace, they're actually shockingly elitist. Mel Robbins starts with a dubious recounting about her son's prom and continues with a story about her friends excluding her on their fabulous vacation. There are stories about an ill person coughing behind her on a plane, a cashier moving slowly at a garden center, posting selfies on social media, and dog shit in a park. Then there are 4 pages about calling off a wedding, not to mention multiple references to brunch and golf, probably the most elitist sport after polo and lacrosse. The let them theory is said to be applicable to the never-ending notifications on your phone, the slow internet connections, the unexpected changes in plans, the endless meetings at work, the inconsiderate behavior of other people, the long lines, the slow walkers, a long line at the coffee shop, traffic, when someone interrupts you during an important task, the person talking loudly on their phone in public, a family member's unsolicited advice, someone else's slow pace in a busy walkway, how fast they check you out at the grocery store, as well as friends inviting you over to watch the game, going out for drinks with, quote, cool coworkers, going away for the weekend, and of course, airports. So here's the thing, the people in this country who read below a 6th grade level are probably the same people who would not be able to come up with $400 to cover an emergency medical expense, which begs the question, who is reading this crap? Who did Mel Robbins even write this book for, other than herself? Does she even know who her audience is? Because people who live hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, probably can't afford to fly anywhere. They probably don't take vacations, and their friends don't either. I'm pretty sure they don't golf, go to brunch, or frequent garden centers or coffee shops. I'm not saying touch grass. I am saying that people in the real world probably have worse problems than deciding whether or not to call off a wedding. They don't really care about lines, traffic, or dog shit, and a lot of them probably don't even have internet service. Bitch, I lived in a post-Soviet country for 2 years. I don't care about lines. That's why I always have a book with me, just not yours. I come from a major metropolitan area. I'm used to traffic. What are you talking about? If your only problems in life are lines, traffic, and internet speeds, I'd say you're doing pretty well. If you get upset about a cashier or another pedestrian moving slowly, what's wrong with you? I understand this book was popular and that Mel Robbins has fans. But here's another question. If you actually liked this book, what's wrong with you? Because at that point, it's not about Mel Robbins anymore. She wouldn't be successful if her followers did not swallow wholesale everything that she spoon feeds them. It's kind of like President Donnie Diaper Dump. Fuck that guy. It's not about him anymore. He would not be able to do as much damage as he is doing without the support of the maggots. So the question is, if you voted for him, what's wrong with you? 1 felony conviction, 34 indictments, inciting an insurrection that killed 5 people and forced 4 civil servants to commit suicide, 27 sexual assault accusers, and those are only the women who were brave enough to come forward. Trump University, Trump Steaks. How much evidence do you need before you recognize that President Potato Head is not qualified to manage a Burger King, let alone the 3rd largest country in the world? If you voted for him not once, not twice, but 3 times, what's wrong with you? If you read this book and you were not as horrified as I was, what's wrong with you? In the movie Idiocracy, the premise is that only stupid people reproduce and smart people don't. So in the future, the average IQ is at an all-time low. And the movie of the year that sweeps the Oscars is a film called Ass. It's about a butt farting. No music, no dialogue, just 2 hours of a single continuous shot of an ass passing gas. That movie came out about 20 years ago, but I have a feeling it was prophetic. The let them theory is the literary equivalent of a pair of butt cheeks making air biscuits for 2 hours. Incidentally, in the movie Idiocracy, the President of the United States is a former porn star and WWF fighter. In other words, he's a television entertainer. Just saying. So why did I write Let Them first, almost 10 years ago? I began writing my essay on workplace bullying in the summer of 2015, immediately after finishing teaching a class in essay writing. That's why my essay is in 5 parts, because in that class I taught 5 different types of essays. My intent was to create sample essays as examples for my students, because my pedagogy is to demonstrate to my students that I know how to do what I'm asking them to do before asking them to do it. So I am not the cobbler without shoes. My employers in education often gave me either no materials or materials that I found pretty much useless. So I was used to creating everything myself. And I never minded, because I am a creative person, which means that I don't have to plagiarize other people's work, but I digress. A typical essay is only about 2 pages, double-spaced. I started writing and I continued for about 9 months, and that thing morphed into over 100 pages, Times New Roman, 12-point font, single-spaced, with 1-inch margins. If you know anything about publishing, that's not a book, that's 2. I started giving my essay to my clients to read before I finished it. Specifically, I gave them the first and longest part. One of my clients, Daniela, read it with great interest. She was an Aquarian academic and intellectual who had been educated at the best university in South America. And she was not a native English speaker, so she read it rather slowly. And as she read it, sometimes with me, she kept saying to me, I want to know what your thesis is. I want to know what your thesis is. And that got me thinking, because at the time, I didn't have one. In the stereotypical Mars-Venus binary, I was more heteronormatively feminine, in that I was just describing and explaining the problem instead of offering solutions. You know, men like to fix things, whereas women prefer to just talk about problems until they feel better without ever actually resolving them. It's not about the nail. At the time, I didn't really have any solutions, and not a lot has changed in the ensuing decade. If you have been bullied in the workplace, by now you know how intractable the problem is. Human resources is evil, management is weak, and your coworkers are shit stains. Your family members and friends all think you're the problem. Even your therapist gaslights you. Most of us who are bullied in the workplace really have our hands tied. We have our backs up against the wall. There's not a lot we can do. What can we do about something that is ultimately a spiritual problem that has afflicted humanity since the dawn of time? But because of Daniela's feedback, I felt I had to come up with, if not a solution, at least some kind of definitive conclusion. I wrote the conclusion to my essay, as I stated, on Easter Sunday, March 27th, 2016, and I mentioned that it was Easter in the conclusion. I was in a reflective, contemplative, and philosophical mood, i.e. depressed and probably hungover. And though I'm not a Christian, I respect Christ consciousness and honor Easter as a holy day. So as I sat on my apartment floor at my laptop, on my coffee table where I worked for about 25 years of my life, I turned my thoughts to God, who, for a lot of us with trauma, is all we have. I wrote about scapegoating, which is actually from a story in the Bible. If you're familiar with that story, you know that it is basically an allegory for projection, which is a huge part of the workplace bullying dynamic. And although I didn't know it at the time, the scapegoat is also symbolic of an unhealed and untrained empath, blithely taking on the energy of other people and carrying it for them as an act of service and unconditional love. I was also writing about karma. Sometimes our only hope in any of this is a vigorous and robust belief in karma. I firmly believe that workplace bullies get their karma, and I have a video on that. And though it may be a controversial opinion, I also believe that anytime anyone subjects you to abuse, they are actually cleaning your karma for you. But I don't want that to be misinterpreted as a justification for victim consciousness. I don't believe that that which does not kill us makes us stronger. But I do know that my suffering has made me a deeper and wiser person. Let them was my take on let go and let God from the 12-step programs. When all else fails, when you have nowhere else to turn, sometimes you have no choice but to simply exit the struggle. Do not engage. Stop engaging because what you resist persists. Instead, place all your faith in a higher power. Turn your face to God, like the sunflower finds the sun. Because God sees everything. There is a higher justice. And as Taylor Swift said, attribution, karma is real. Again, I know let them is not a theory or a thesis. It's an imperative sentence. And I know that some of you don't like that conclusion. I agree, it's anticlimactic, but it was the best I could do at the time. I try at the end of every video on this channel to arrive at some kind of uplifting conclusion that, if it does not solve the problem, at least offers you some words of support, encouragement, and maybe even hope in the darkness. Sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't. My conclusion at the end of one of my most popular videos from over 3 years ago, Workplace Bullying is Not What You Think It is also a stretch. You can hear me reaching, but again, that was the best I could do at the time. As my friends Jack and Lindsay over at Atma Occult, that was me giving credit and attribution to other creators for their work, teach us the 12th house in astrology, the Pisces house, is the house of spirituality. It rules everything hidden, invisible, and unseen, like sleep, dreams, the spirit world, and subconscious mind. It also rules prisons and mental institutions like asylums. Why? Because often those are the only places where people can find God because they're desperate and they're alone. Abuse is always isolating. When I wrote Let Them, first, 10 years ago, before Cassie Phillips and before Mel Robbins, I was trying to write about spirituality, the only thing that has ever helped me with my trauma. I was not writing about proms, golf, or scooping poop in a fucking park. In the intervening years, as you know, I've made hundreds of videos about workplace bullying, in addition to my essay, which remains on my website just as an extra resource for you guys. I script almost every video in advance, which can take weeks. Sometimes I think about the topic for a year before I sit down to write it. It takes an entire day for me to film. If a video is longer than 45 minutes, it took me 2 days. It takes another day to edit and another day to upload. And I just want to explain briefly what you guys call my blink rate. Apparently, I blink a lot in my videos. As I learned from Spidey over at the Behavioral Arts Awesome channel, that was me giving credit and attribution to another creator. People blink excessively for primarily 2 reasons: mental focus and dehydration. As I stated, I script almost every video in advance and then memorize those scripts in 8-line, 100-word chunks. So I'm trying to remember what I have memorized. Also, I can't eat very much or drink anything on the days that I film. I have GERD, acid reflux disease, for which I take 2 medications. And if I eat or drink and then try to talk, I burp excessively. So I'm dehydrated, and when you're dehydrated, you have to blink to lubricate your eyes. But because I'm so dehydrated, I usually have a fierce migraine the next day, but that's okay because I'm just editing. I used to stay up all night editing and upload in the middle of the night, but now I just do it the next day. I also spend a significant amount of time reading all of your comments and thinking about how I'm going to respond to the longer ones. As I stated, it took me about 9 months just to write my essay. As for the rest of my website, I launched my website on July 24th, 2011, which I remember because July 24th was my mother's birthday. And in 2011, I was the age that she was when she had me, so about 15 years ago. And it now totals almost 600 pages of content, Times New Roman, 12-point font, single-spaced with 1-inch margins. And that excludes graphics, photographs, drawings, and videos. Again, I have no team, no editor, no publisher, because I don't need one. I'm all alone, it's just me. Everything I produce, write, edit, publish, I do all by myself. In my work, I draw almost exclusively from my own personal experience of being bullied in the workplace for almost 30 years. I actually do very little research, and when I do, I cite it. Dr. Romani says this, Melanie Tanya Evans says that. Mariah, Taylor, Ariana, Netflix. Pretty much the only research I did for my essay was to read the original do-gooder derogation study, and I cited the authors. If I go with my average hourly rate, which is relatively low, I estimate that my website and my YouTube channel together represent about $234,000 worth of work, and that is a low estimate. To date, my website has made me no money, and the amount of money I've earned from YouTube is negligible. I don't do it for the money. I've stated before that I consider this my volunteering. This is the best that I can do to try to help people who are victimized by a societal ill that drives countless numbers of people, including me, to attempt suicide every year. I know that in the narcissistic abuse recovery community, creators often borrow from one another. I see my ideas and my words parroted without attribution in other people's TED Talks and videos. Some don't even bother to change the video titles. Sweetheart, it's spiritual warfare, not welfare. But here's how I see it. At least people are talking about workplace bullying. That is the whole point of this channel, to start a conversation. It's kind of like astrology. No, Mercury retrograde isn't really a big deal. Real astrologers don't care that much about it. But if my astrology girls and gays are carrying on about Mercury retrograde, at least they're expressing an interest in the discipline. In my videos, I try to always name check my inspo. If I have ever failed to do so, I apologize. But some degree of idea sharing is expected. I do not, however, do all this work so some rich narcissist can make herself even richer by stealing other people's words because she's desperate to pay off her debts. The problem isn't plagiarism. The problem is that my newer viewers who found me after December 24th, 2024, may read my essay, which again is linked in my channel's description and in the description of almost every workplace bullying video, all the way to the end, and think that I plagiarized Mel Robbins. Then I could lose viewers, which would affect me. But I guess people don't think of that when they decide to steal my words, allegedly for entertainment purposes only. I'm sorry, I know that I'm supposed to let them, but if anyone thought that of me, I would take offense. I don't care about insults to my physical appearance or my intelligence. I do not attach my self-importance to the way that I look or to my IQ. I would, however, take offense if anyone ever thought that I were not only so unethical as to plagiarize anyone, but also so fucking unoriginal and uncreative that I would stoop to copying anything from this abject tripe. My intent with this video is to clear my name. So what are our takeaways? Number one, copyright your stuff. If you care about your work, copyright it. Intellectual property theft is the number one complaint among targets of workplace bullying in academia. That's the workplace bullying technique of extortion. And it is the reason that academia is one of the top professions for workplace bullying. Number two, as I stated in my video, Why Workplace Bullies Bully, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. For those of us with a genuine service calling, an authentically altruistic and humanitarian bent, a spirit of goodwill and benevolence, unfortunately, all too often, we only expose ourselves to exploitation at the hands of narcissists who just want to take everything that we have to offer while offering us absolutely nothing in return. For many of us, it can be a lifelong struggle to learn how to balance our own needs with our purpose to be of service to others without developing resentment. Way back in 2020, when I first started making these videos, I said that narcissists are uncreative because they are no longer connected to the creator. That's why they're so empty and so obsessed with constantly filling the void within with other people's stuff. I know I'm precognizant, but I didn't know how right I was. I'll leave you with one more quote from Mel Robbery. One of the things I see people get hung up on all the time is this belief that, quote, I need to be different. That is a fancy way to say that you're afraid other people will think you copied them. Let them think you copied them because you did, and they copied the formula from someone else because they did. Do not reinvent the wheel. Follow the formula and use it to your advantage. Yeah, like millions of dollars in profit off of other people's words. In other words, if anyone thinks that Mel Robbins copied anyone, well, that's just their opinion. I see what you did there, Mel. That's fancy. In summary, if you'd rather French fry potatoes in your own body fat than listen to another word of this awful, allow me to suggest some healthier options. There's always Goodnight Moon, one of my faves. My Pet Goat is another one. And of course, Everybody Poops. Or you could read my essay. You can even plagiarize it if you want to, and apparently there's nothing I can do about it. But you might enjoy reading it because I actually have talent. By the way, thieves are condemned to the 8th circle of hell in Dante's Inferno. That was me giving credit and attribution to another writer. My man, DJ MC, Dante Alighieri. Oh, and one more thing. For the person on someone's team who read my entire essay, including the part where I mentioned that I tried to take my own life twice, and decided to go ahead and steal from me anyway without even asking me for my permission so she could make her boss rich, allegedly for entertainment purposes only. I hope you enjoy your holidays. I also hope that you enjoy your karma. Because God sees everything, there is a higher justice, and karma is real. Merry Christmas, I guess.